Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to another tank review, this time having a look at the AMX 5100 Tier 8 French heavy tank. As normal, going to kick this thing off with a little bit of history. So, following the Second World War and throughout the 1950s, the French AMX company started developing a 50-ton-ish tank. The idea was that this would be a new medium tank for the French and potential export nations as well. It was rather an ambitious project, supposed to combine the firepower of the Tiger with the armoured protection of the Panther, with good mobility, the abundance of the M4 Sherman, and all weighing in at less than an M26 Pershing. It was a very, very ambitious project. And throughout the 1950s, this machine was developed. However, with the advent of the Korean War, for example, the Americans, whom the French were hoping would fund this project, or partially fund this project, because France, in its post-war condition, just didn't have the cash to do a lot of military projects. The Americans actually made the M47 pattern available to the European nations in fairly large numbers, with one stroke of a pen rendering the AMX 50 obsolete. As it was, the AMX 50 was subsequently upgunned in order to try and adapt itself to still find a place in the market and still find production. But that is the story of the AMX 5120, which is the Tier 9 heavy tank. So down here at Tier 8 we have the AMX 5100. And when we go through this tank, have constantly in the back of your mind, this was originally conceived and designed as a medium tank that packed a punch. That was the idea. That doesn't mean that it was without armour. Again, they were aiming to give it comparable armoured protection to the Panther, and in World War II terms that is good armoured protection, but in a post-war situation the Panther's armour would be looking decidedly dodgy. But this was designed and conceived as a medium tank, even though we have it in the game here as a heavy. So, what do we actually get with regard to this machine? Well, let's kick off by having a quick look at the grind before we go any further. So, the French heavy tank line is a bit of a weird beast. You start down here, obviously, tiers 1, 2 and 3. These are all, well, the tier 1, you have to go through the tier 1 regardless of what French tank line you want to play. But the D1 and the D2 at tiers 2 and 3 are pretty terrible. They are slow, they are ponderous, they are not especially well armoured, and they don't have a particularly good gun. They are pretty much bad, however you think of it. Tier 4, you have the first of the French heavy tanks. This is the Char B1. Historically, this was one of the finest tanks of its day. Unfortunately, the tactics that the French army employed were, well, they left a lot to be desired. In the game, it is, well, you can actually have some fun in it, providing you are prepared to fire a bit of APCR ammo here and there. It does get limited matchmaking, like the other Tier 4 heavy tanks, which is nice. Tier 5, we have the BDR G1B. Before the introduction of the OI Experimental, this thing packed the largest gun to be found on a Tier 5 heavy tank, and the gun is still pretty respectable, 90mm gun. This is actually a fairly decent tank. I didn't like it when I first played it, because it's sluggish and the armour isn't particularly good, but the gun does hit hard. It's not a sniper though. The gun does hit hard. ARL 44 and AMX M4 45 at tiers 6 and 7 respectively. The ARL 44 actually gains some armour, which is something you don't really see again until about tier 9. The tank is alright. You've got a choice of 3 different guns on it. You can use any one of those depending on your particular preference. That's entirely up to you. The Tier 7 AMX M4 45 I have a review of on my channel, although this tank has changed since I made that review, so I will redo that at some point. At the time I found it a rather lackluster tank, with armour that was meh, a gun that was meh, mobility that was meh, it was just meh. But it has been buffed since. However, at Tier 8, which is where we are, you suddenly get a very stark transition. The Tier 8, 9 and 10 machines are very different to those that came before, because they mount an autoloader. But more on that in a moment. So if we have a quick look at the modules, obviously the suspension, the top suspension you'll have to unlock yourself. You never get that from another tank. There's only one turret on this machine, so you don't have to worry too much, or you don't have to worry at all about upgrading the turret. Now, top radio, this thing has been used on a whole variety of tanks, and in this particular line you unlock this on the ARL 44, so you have that radio. Hurrah! Engines, this middle engine again you have unlocked from the ARL 44. The top engine, unless you've played some of the other, oh no, I tell a lie, you'll have the top engine from the AMX M445, the tier 7. So you've already got the top engine, assuming you elited the AMX M445, which is nice. So you've already got all this stuff, that just leaves the guns. Now, the stock gun, 170 pen, you don't want to be using that, but thankfully you don't have to, because you should have this 90mm gun again from the AMX M445. 212 penetration, 240 alpha damage. May not sound particularly spectacular, but 212 is good enough. And with regard to the alpha damage, bear in mind that comes part and parcel of a 6-round autoloader, so it actually does a lot more damage than it might at first appear. So the only module you actually have to unlock on the AMX 5100 is the 100mm gun. This is the first time you will have come across this gun, unless you have also gone up the French medium tank lines, but assuming you have not gone up those to the higher tiers, this is the first time you come across this particular gun. On the one hand, it's 34,500 experience and 127,500 credits, so it is not cheap. On the other hand, the 90mm is a perfectly decent grinding gun, so it's not a particularly painful grind to get this, and I do recommend you get this, even though you don't strictly speaking have to. You could unlock the AMX 5120, because A, it does make this tank, and B, it will make subsequent grinds on the AMX 5120 much less painful if you've got that 100mm gun to use. So, there's the grind. Let's have a quick look at what we actually get with this tank. So, kicking off, we have got 1400 hit points, which for a tier 8 heavy tank, well, it's the worst of the tier 8 heavy tanks. It's, well, about the same as a Tiger at tier 7. And, once again, bear in mind this thing was originally conceived and designed as a medium tank. 1400 hit points, not so great. Armour, 90mm at the front of the turret and the hull, 35 on the side of the hull, 30 on the side of the turret, and 30 and 30 at the rear. We will look more at the armour profile in a bit, but for now, well, this thing was designed to have the armoured protection of a Panther, which is fine, but in the game a Panther is down at tier 7, and at tier 7, that 85mm of frontal upper plate, sloped, is okay. It's not fantastic protection, but it's alright. Here at tier 8, this 90mm is only really going to protect you from lucky bounces, you know, where you've got a quirky angle, or the occasional very low tier light tank shooting at you, again at funky angles. You might get a bounce then. In general, you shouldn't expect to bounce anything. Mobility, well, you have 17 horsepower per ton, which is very much a medium tank level of horsepower. Actually, this is less than the tank was designed with. Historically, it was designed to have 20, but in the game we have got 17. It's a 50-ton machine, AMX 50, 50-ton machine. So that's a pretty decent power to weight ratio. Top speed 50 kilometers an hour, reverse 20, traverse speed 33. These are all stats that would be much more in keeping with a medium tank. Again, remember this was supposed to be a medium tank. Camo, let's not even bother, this is a big tank, the camo values suck. And spotting, view range, 380 meters is alright. Yeah, that's okay. It's not the 400 you get on the T-32, but it's perfectly acceptable. And now we talk about the gun. So, let's actually have a look at these guns. Now, there are two guns that I guess you could make an argument for using on this tank, so we'll have a look at them both. 90mm DCA 45 from the AMX M445 at tier 7, except this time you now pack an autoloader. 6 shells in the magazine, 2.73 seconds between shells within that magazine, 35-second reload of the magazine itself, 212 penetration, 220 alpha damage, 0.36 dispersion, and a 3-second aim time. In fact, if you compare the two guns, then let's actually look at what's different between them. If we compare them, what are the differences? Well, firstly, time to completely load one magazine. 35 seconds with the 90mm gun, 50 seconds with the 100mm gun. And this is probably the single most frustrating thing about this tank. 50 seconds to reload that magazine with the top 100mm gun. 35 less painful with the 90mm gun, however. You get 20mm less penetration with your armor-piercing rounds. You get 60 less alpha damage, which means you have less damage in the magazine. So in practice, yes, the 90mm gun can sometimes feel more comfortable to use just because you've got that faster reload time, but honestly, in my experience, it is worth going for the 100mm just to have that clip potential, because you will find with either gun you've got okay accuracy, really dodgy aim time, and your gun reloads within the magazine faster than it aims. So you might find the odd shell just go stray, and then you're going to need every bit of damage from the rest of that magazine that you can possibly get. So I do recommend this top 100mm gun, but again, DCA 45 is fine for grinding with. So if we have a look at this top 100mm gun, let's just get straight to the outstanding feature. 6 shells in the magazine, 300 damage per shell, 1800 magazine damage. That is enough with average damage rolls to clip a Grilla 15. Yes, the tier 10 tank destroyer. This is a lot of damage. This thing packs one hell of a punch, however, be careful. The aim time of 3 seconds, as I mentioned, is longer than the time it takes to reload a shell within the magazine. So at mid to long ranges, you're not going to be pumping the shells out as quickly as you might like, because you're going to try and let the gun itself aim. But this is very much an assassination style tank, and how well you do in it is very much going to come down to it's going to come down to how you can manage that very long reload time, 50 seconds for that magazine, and how you can manage the damage within that magazine. That's really what this tank is all about. I'm going to show you some gameplay in a bit that hopefully will highlight that. Now, in terms of consumables and whatnot, I have your standard set of consumables here. I don't remember particular problems with this thing catching on fire, so I guess you could swap that out for strong coffee. Buff the tank all round, not a terrible idea. Of course, you could go for large versions of the first aid kit and the repair kit, and you've also got the fuel, although I probably wouldn't bother. So I would say either go for these, or swap those two out for the large versions, or swap the fire extinguisher out for coffee. Some combination of that. Ammunition, you can see I've got 6 rounds of high explosive, 6 of APCR, and the rest is armor piercing. You have a good ammo capacity with this tank, although I have never fired anything that wasn't armor piercing out of it. 232 penetration is perfectly good in tier 10 games, as long as you're not engaging people from the front, and you shouldn't be engaging people from the front anyway. So I didn't find I ever needed the APCR, and the HE would be highly situational. When I was originally playing this tank, that was back when the tier 10 waffle thrower was still in the game, and that was basically the only situation that was going to get used. You could probably forego the high explosive entirely, but again, if you want to take one mag of it, that's fine. You get quite a lot of ammunition in this tank. Equipment, vertical stabilizer, just do it. You do not get a gun rammer in this tank, so that is something worth bearing in mind. Apart from the vertical stabilizer, there is a little bit of a choice here, and of course now that we've got the bonds in the game, there are other bits of equipment that you can take, but the comments I make about the core bits of equipment would apply to these as well, so meh. So, vertical stabilizer, you just want it. Then, well, you've got improved vents, which is an option. You've got an enhanced gun laying drive, and you have got coated optics. Which two you pick of those three is kind of up to you. I went with vents and a gun laying drive to get the maximum performance out of this gun that I could. With a gun laying drive, it means that your gun will actually aim in the same time that you reload a shell within that magazine, so it is actually one of those vehicles on which an enhanced gun laying drive is quite useful. You could mount optics for a bit of spotting. I'll leave that up to you. I would say your equipment setup wants to be either vertical stabilizer, gun laying drive and optics, or vertical stabilizer, gun laying drive and vents. I chose the latter, but I leave that up to you. Try them out, see what you think overall. The last thing I should probably mention before we have a look at the armor profile and things like that is gun depression. The gun depression on this tank is not fantastic. If memory serves, I think it's 6 degrees. Yeah, it's 6 degrees of gun depression. And in common with these oscillating turrets, 13 degrees of gun elevation isn't that much. So do be careful. There are times when you can be caught out because you can't physically point your gun up enough to shoot the bad guys. So, let's have a look at module locations, armor profile, and some gameplay now then. So, with regard to the modules, nothing too surprising. We have the driver and the radio operator both down here in the hull toward the front. If we have a look at the side profile, the rear of the tank is unsurprisingly made of engines and fuel tanks. You've got the commander up here in the turret. Right at the back of this oscillating turret, though, you do have, apparently, some ammo racks, so that is something to be careful of. Again, ammo rack in the rear of the turret and fuel tank and engine in the rear of the tank. From the other side, still more ammo rack, gunner over here in the right hand side of the turret as well. And then, yeah, I mean, from above, nothing really to be too surprised by. So basically, everything's where you would expect it to be. Just bear in mind the ammo rack is positioned right in the back of the turret. So, yeah. Okay then, 5100 and armor profile. Boom! So, rear of the tank, nothing to really get too excited about. It is the advertised 30mm, everything and its wife is going to penetrate you. Side of the tank, it is the advertised 35mm on the hull. On the turret, you've got 30 toward the rear, a zone of 60, and the front part is the 90. But does this give you any scope for angling? Not really, unless you're going to be at an auto bounce angle. So don't put too much into your side armor, and as if that wasn't insulting enough, this section of 60mm, of course, if you try and angle the tank, just becomes flattened. So, nah. The only armor you really have is bang on the front. If anyone does try and shoot the lower plate of this tank, it's 60mm angled back quite an extreme angle, so you can just giggle, because that's about the one place on the front they will reliably bounce. Gun mantlet, well, there are zones on it that can bounce things. It really depends how it's hit. Front of the turret, well, the front of the turret has effectively about 160 armor, 150 armor, something like that. Or there are zones of about 150, 160 armor due to the angling, which can bounce some lower tier, medium, and light tanks. Upper front plate, effectively, it's about 120-ish. Again, you can bounce some lower tier, light, and maybe medium tanks here or there. But you really shouldn't be expecting this armor to perform miracles because, well, it won't. Sorry. There isn't really much else to say about the armor, so let's just have a look at some games. Right then, here we go with the first game. We are here on Sand River, which is not necessarily the best map for this tank. Sand River does like you to have some gun depression, something the AMX 5100 is not overly endowed with, but there we go. Tier 8 match, so we are top tier. And we just drove past a mutant. Hurrah! I think this might have been this game from around about when Wargaming decided they were going to bring the M6 Mutant back for sale for a short while. Anyway, we are initially going to try and keep our opponents at arm's reach. This is a tier... this is an assault game. We're on the defending team, so we just have to defend our side of the map. And if you've got a tank with a bit of mobility, position that I always like to come to is this one just here. Now this is a patch 9.17 replay. This is before they changed artillery, so that FV207 on the enemy team, that thing's got a fairly nasty gun on it, and if he hits me, I'm so long, cruel world. Now, straight off the bat, I spot a KV-85, who is looking like a very, very tasty snack. One shot into him, he flubs his shot. Second in, and can we polish this guy off? We should be able to. There we go. He may have been 2 tiers below us, but we used 3 shells to kill all of him, and we would have still had 3 shells left to use. Having said that, it doesn't look like there's going to be any more targets for me in the near future, so I decide to go for a reload. Interestingly, our artillery has gone to G1, very isolated there, which I find a little concerning, but there we go. I spot out a Churchill gun carrier. Such a powerful tank. Don't have optics here, but my view range is still sufficient to spot out some people. Trying to be a little bit careful because I don't want to get spotted and then wrecked by, say, for example, artillery. And if I go up there and try and get a shot myself, my lack of gun depression will probably cost me some health. Having said that, no, I've been spotted. I'm not taking that risk. Screw that. It's just not worth it. We're 3-2 up at the moment, which is nice. And just seeing... they're terrible shots on the Churchill. I am actually hanging around to try and take one here, which misses. Second one hits. I take a hit from a Super Pershing, though. Was that worth it? Nah. You could argue the point. However, there is an Oni and there is an IS-3 pushing around here. Oni is a giant target. My gun depression is a bit dodgy. He's also pointing his gun this way. I want to make sure I'm no longer spotted. Oni is still a giant target. Got 4 shells left in the magazine. 1, 2, 3, and 4 takes him out with a slightly high damage roll. And we reload our magazine again. We've lost our Su-8 artillery piece, unfortunately, but at least I was able to take out the Oni into the bargain. Giant target. We'll take advantage of him. Reloading for a considerable amount of time. I can't really do anything about this Super Pershing, unfortunately. And I can't do anything about the IS-3 either. However, our team is winning this 10-3. So, this is looking like it should be a pretty convincing win. Still reloading. Almost there. And I'm wondering if I can do something about this Super Pershing. There aren't that many of the team left, so one in the side of the turret. Super Pershing takes the hint. Second shot flubs. Trying to pick out that section on the top of his turret. Third shot flubs, and IS finishes him off. Fair enough. Up to 2.7k damage, by the way. 3 shells left in the magazine. We haven't got shots on the IS-3, but there's also an ISU-152, an IS, and the FV-207 to find, and hopefully kill. There is the IS. 3 shots left in the magazine. That's an average of 900 damage. Probably won't kill this guy, though you never know, you might get a little bit lucky. Especially with a couple of high rolls. There we go. Managed to kill the IS there and reload once again. Just got the artillery and the ISU-152 left to find. Have to be a little bit careful because obviously vulnerable while I'm reloading. And there is the artillery. I've spotted him, but I can't shoot him. And Sixth Sense goes off, of course. He appears to be... No, he's turning to face this way. Now, we know the ISU doesn't have a shot on me. I might be able to finish this artillery off, which would be quite nice. Someone puts a shot into him while I'm spotting him. Well, that is definitely very nice. Can I finish this guy off? Almost finished reloading the mag. There we go. Good night, sweet prince. There's kill number 4. And that just leaves the ISU-152. I have more than enough damage left in this magazine to kill him if I should come across him, especially as he's only on half health. So we're going to get up there and see what we can do. I may or may not make it in time. I'm just going to fast forward this a little bit. The AMX 5100 is a reasonably mobile tank, but you don't want to watch it driving around if you don't have to, and that is the game. So let's go and have a look at the post-game stats. Here we go then. That was enough for First Class Mastery Fighter, Fire for Effect, Bruiser, high caliber and tank sniper medals. Most of my damage there was from relatively long range. Finished second on our team with 3,825 damage done, 4 kills, 1,173 base experience. Well done, by the way, to that friendly STRV. 2.6k damage, 2 kills, 1,340 XP in a tier 8 match. Good show on him. And our team just generally outperformed the enemy team. 16 shots fired, 14 hits, 13 penetrations for that damage count. 2.2k was from more than 300 meters. We received 2 hits, both of them penetrated, and a bit of assistance damage into the bargain. Was using a premium account at the time, so that was basically a 40,000 credit profit, but even without that premium account, it still would have been almost a 20,000 credit profit, as we did quite a nice amount of damage in that game. But we didn't do anything particularly spectacular. We basically just shot the guys that we could shoot, and had the time to reload our magazine when we needed to. So, let's go and have a look at a game where we are not at the top of the feeding pool. Feeding pool? That's a bit of an odd phrase. Anyway, where we're bottom tier. Here we are then. Tier 10 match, as promised, and we are on Prokhorovka. Oh, it's Fiery Salient. Sure, whatever. Same diff. It's a big, wide, open map. Now, there's no artillery in this match. It's no coincidence that the 2 matches I've shown you, where we've done fairly well, or rather, the 2 matches I've shown you to show you how the tank performs, have been ones with not that much artillery. Artillery does kind of ruin your day in this machine, because you tend to want to stay stationary for a respectable period of time while you unload that magazine, as a general rule of thumb. Now, we are going to basically play this game as if we are a medium tank, because we are effectively a medium tank. So let's run with that. Moving up to this central ridgeline, and hopefully we can get some shots on some peoples and kill them with any luck, or even spot them. Now, because there's no artillery, of course, it's going to limit how much our spotting is actually going to achieve. Again, this is a patch 9.17 game, by the way, so like that RU251, for example, is still tier 8, ditto for the AMX 1390. But there's some assistance damage onto the Object 140 straight away, which is nice. We've got a presence up on the hill on our right hand flank, which is good. Our T-57 Heavy appears to have taken a lot of damage already, which is not good. We don't seem to really have any vision over on the 1 and 2 lines, which is a bit dicey. Speaking of that T-57 Heavy, ta-ra! What are you going to do, I guess? What are you going to do? But the Object 907 manages to kill the TVP into the bargain. So, all in all, we trade a tier 10 autoloader for a tier 10 autoloader. So, that's not too bad. Yeah, it was the tier 10. So, yeah, sure, it's fine for a trade. Seeing if we get some shots over toward the hill. It takes this gun a million years to aim. There we go, into that TVP. 1 shot in, second one, no idea if it hit or not. We're not really going to blind fire too much because, well, magazine has a really long reload time. And again, just trying to keep our opponents at arm's reach where possible, because this is a giant target, so if you get yourself into a brawling situation, you're going to take all of the damage ever. Toward the end of the game, sure, go in for those assassinations, by all means. But in the early parts of the game, you really want to be conserving your health as much as you physically can. Just having a look. No idea why I'm looking at that E75. Getting an itchy trigger finger, apparently. Right, so there is a guy who's been spotted up on that hill. Unfortunately, he's slightly out of our render range, which is a little bit annoying. And I'm currently working out what it is I'm going to do. If I move a little bit closer to that hill, I should be able to get shots on people, and apparently I'll get spotted into the bargain. That shot probably didn't hit, but I take a shot from the AMX CDC there, which is a little unfortunate. Ooh. Finish off the CDC. Someone else nails the ISU. But the E75 turns around, unfortunately. Try a shot into the TVP, and it actually bounces, despite the fact that the TVP's armour is trash. Nice to know that shot from the AMX CDC, by the way, was premium APCR shell. I wouldn't be surprised if he just double tapped it because it's a tier 10 match, which I always find a little sad because people can engage their brain and not have to use it, but if he wants to, that's up to him. It's just credits he's thrown away when shooting at this tank because my armor sucks. Anyway, so far nothing too spectacular. We've put a couple of damaging shots in, done a little bit of spotting, taken a single hit in return, so, you know, so far we've done okay. Scoreline is 5-4. Just sort of holding the fort, really. Seeing if I can spot anyone over there. Don't have an amazing view range, sorry. Because again, remember, I have vents on this tank rather than optics. This is the sort of situation where you might decide you'd prefer optics over vents or over the enhanced gun laying drive. That, of course, is up to you. But I decided not to bother with the vents. So we just lost a Scorpion and our AMX 1390. It's always a shame when you lose your light tank on Prokhorovka. Your eyes have, yeah, just disappeared. That's never a good thing. So just trying to see if I can come around here back to this bit of the map. And you might be thinking this is a bit of a slow match. And yes, it is, but this is very much how Prokhorovka does tend to work out. Despite the fact that we don't have any artillery in this match, people don't just want to drive forward, get spotted, and be deleted. Yeah. Go figure. RU-251 has now been spotted, however, so we might be able to put some shots into him. He's getting shot up. There we go. We managed to put one in. This guy really did take quite a lot of damage, and now he is dead. Object 140 there. And these guys have apparently decided that they need to go ham as all hell. Goodbye, Mr. Batchat. There we go, kill number 2. Not really sure why he thought that was a good idea. Guess he got a bit impatient, bored, greedy, I don't know. Either way, it didn't work out too well for him and we're rewarded with the kill. Still got that T-25 pilot, presumably up down the 1 line, so we want to be careful about exposing our tank too much, because I don't really want to take a shot from him if I don't have to, and I don't have a huge amount of fire support over here. There's a TVP hugging the red line, and that's about it. 4 shots left in the magazine. You always want to keep in mind, how many shots have you got left in your mag? How much damage does that equate to? There's a shot through the side of the Object 140's turret. 3 shells left in the mag, which is of course 900 clip damage. And again, can I spot anyone? Will any of them get shot? We just lost our T-25, but someone claimed their Scorpion. We're 2 tanks down at the moment. Still got 3 shells left in my mag. Don't really want to go for a reload because these sort of engagements are not the sort of engagements you really want with your autoloaders anyway. Hello, Mr. Object. Goodbye, Mr. Object. So that's him done. TVP is now coming down to do something about RE75. Not sure if I'm gonna... Nah, I'm not gonna make it in time, unfortunately, to do something about that TVP, which is a little bit of a shame. But there we go. This tank is fairly mobile, but it's not a light tank. Take a shot in the bum from the T-25 pilot, unfortunately. And thankfully, our Centurion does manage to finish off the TVP, and I'm going for a reload because I only had 2 shells left in the mag. So, 4 tanks plays 4. They have lost all of their tier 10s, several of them being rather too aggressive, but there we go. So they are down to tier 9 and 8. We have got 2 of our tier 10s remaining, the TVP and the Object. Now we know that T-25 pilot is still over there because he just shot me. I'm just trying to see what I can possibly do. There's the pilot, but I'm still reloading this gun, and he is dead. So is the T-10. That just leaves a T-34 and a T-54E1, and at this point, I'm thinking of taking a little bit of a risk just to squeeze some more damage in. Hello, Mr. T-34. How are you today? 1, 2, 3. I take 1 shot from him, but 4. He's dead. T-54E1 is over on the left-hand flank. Got 2 shells left in the mag. That one misses. This is what I mean about the gun being a bit derpy. That one hits. And we reload the magazine. There's a very good chance that we're not going to get to shoot any more this match, because that T-54 only has 645 health left. And there's a 907 and a TVP, both closing in on him. I'm pretty sure his days are numbered. He does manage to kill the TVP, however, so credit where credit is due. But I'm pretty sure that object is just going to go up to him and slap him in the face, and that will be that. Or maybe the Centurion will be the one to pick up the kill. Nope, it is the object. And that is the game. So there we go. Let's go and have a look once again at the stats for this one. And here we go. That was enough for First Class Mastery, believe it or not, Fighter, Duelist, and Fire for Effect. We actually finished at the top of our team with 2,637 damage done, 4 kills, 1,100 base experience. Remembering, of course, we did a bit of spotting, and also a number of the targets we shot, the Batchat, the Object 140, the TVP, the T-54, they were all a higher tier than us. 16 shots fired, 12 hits, 11 penetrations for that damage count, most of which was actually from closer range this time. 3 hits received, and once again our armour did nothing. 3 penetrations, 603 assistance damage. With a premium account, that was a 21,000 credit profit. Without, that would have only been a 6,000 credit profit. This ammunition is not cheap, around about 1,000 credits a shot, and the gun is kind of derpy, so yeah, bear those in mind. Made a decent amount of experience into the bargain, however. So, there we go, there's a couple of bits of gameplay for you. Let's just jump back into the garage. What do I think of this machine overall? Right, well, this is a typical French machine. Its strengths are very impressive, its weaknesses are glaring. It's all going to come down to whether or not you can manage that reload time on the gun. If you find yourself being able to manage that reload time, then this can be a devastating support tank. You do not have the armor or the hit points to play the traditional heavy tank role. You just can't do it. And that is not what this tank is for. This tank, forget that this tank is classified as a heavy. This tank is a medium tank with a really, really powerful gun. That's the mindset you want to get in. So you want to be catching people unawares. If you can get people on their own, you should be able to murder them. And they can only put a shot or two into you. It's all about getting good trades and trading your health away effectively and opportunely. Don't be afraid to engage targets at long range, just be aware that you have a very, very long magazine reload time. And as I said, that needs to be managed. Personally, I found this tank rather frustrating. There were games where I managed to make it work, don't get me wrong, but the reload time, the kind of derpy nature of the gun, I mean with the aim time, the soft stats, the shell velocity, yeah, I was not a massive fan of this tank. Also, it's less of an issue now, but you are a giant artillery target. This thing is huge, and poorly armoured from above, poorly armoured all round, but especially from above, so artillery shells, well, they used to be able to one-shot you with depressing regularity. Now they'll just do a very respectable amount of damage. So do bear that in mind. I am not personally keeping it. There are other tier 8 tanks I would rather play. And actually, with the introduction of the Lorraine 40T at tier 8, I haven't played the Lorraine, but I do wonder how much that will eat into the role of the 5100. The Lorraine just looks like a kind of more comfortable tank to play with some very similar strengths, but more manageable weaknesses, essentially. But anyway, I'm not keeping this thing, but it is by no means a bad tank, but it's very difficult to compare it with anything else because, well, there's nothing else at tier 8 that's really anything like it. The closest comparison I found to this tank, tier for tier, was the old tier 10 Waffenträger. Giant target, very soft, devastating gun. The difference is the Waffenträger didn't really have the mobility that this thing does. But I'm not keeping it. Whether you do or not is up to you. It's certainly not a bad tank. It's just not a particularly beginner-friendly tank. Let's put it that way. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that review, maybe even found it informative. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel. And as ever, I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.